Guys, how's it going? I'm the Crown Clown. Today we are coming right back at you with What If Deku was Sabertooth? So, this is part 2, and before we get started, I'm going to toss this out here right now. Do you guys want Sabertooth Deku to be a hero, villain, or vigilante? You tell me in the comment section below. Whoever has the most votes wins. So, I'm giving the power to you guys to tell me which path do you want me to take the story into. Have him be a villain like his father, a hero like his uncle's wanting him to be, or a vigilante like his uncle was. So, let's get in with a little recap. So, Deku is a mutant, and basically his whole body style is how you see him on the thumbnail. So he has blonde hair mixed in with brown, and he has amber eyes. And, you know, he's pretty much built because Wolverine made him get built. And his only friend at this point is Asui, because she moved schools after the incident that Deku, almost put Bakugo in a body bag. And, Deku was pretty much had the ambulance called for him, but it ended up being for Bakugo. So, where we left off was, Wolverine and Deku killed Sabertooth. Sabertooth is dead, and it was by Deku's hands, but Wolverine, said it was him, so Deku wouldn't get in any trouble. Because he was already on thin ice with everyone, including the police and the heroes at, UA, which Deku's about to have to take his entrance exam at. So Wolverine, saved Deku because if it would have came out that it was him, no one would have wanted him. He would have been on the run and looked at as just like his father. And, Deku got home with Wolverine after hearing that his mother had died as well. And Wolverine asked him, "Who you gonna be, kid?" Deku, with his father's very first outfit on, which is the one in the thumbnail, looks him straight in the eyes and tells him, "I'm Sabertooth." Taking his father's name, but twisting the identity of it. Deku sees no greater revenge than that, of being the one to twist his own father's name and legacy into something that can give people hope. That's where Deku's head's at right now. But he does have a lot of mental trauma. Remember, he has adamantium mixed with vibranium on his skeleton. He went through the same process as Wolverine and Sabertooth. Well, Victor. And on top of that, he just killed his dad, which just adds on to the more emotional trauma that he's going through. And he's living with Wolverine full time now. And he does inherit all his dad's money and all of, Inko's money and both of their belongings. So he's settling in with Wolverine. And for the remainder, Deku just lifts weights, fights with Wolverine, and hangs out with Asui. That's pretty much it. So, it's time for the entrance exam. Deku moves over there, and, he's waiting, and everyone's just staring at him because they all know who he is. And Ida actually comes up and, tells him don't cause any trouble, and Deku doesn't respond to him whatsoever. He knows that they're all scared of him. He can smell it. And, he's just waiting. Asui's not there, so, yeah. He feels somebody bump into him. He looks back and he notices this girl's on the floor. So he reaches down there to help her up, and she panics, and, everyone's looking at him, they're just like, "Oh, look, he's trying to assault somebody." And Deku says, "What? No, I was just trying to help her up." And they're like, yeah, right. Are you okay? Was he trying to assault you? And she's like, no, no, I bumped into him and fell. He was actually trying to help me up. And everyone's just like, oh, he was actually telling the truth? Oh, well, you have to expect some animals can't lie after all. And Deku, he's not too happy about that because he hears all the sly comments everyone's making about him, all the prejudging, because the video's out there. Like, there's nothing they can do to take it down. Everyone knows who Deku is and who his father was. And, you know, Bakugo sees Deku, and Deku sees Bakugo. But Deku doesn't do nothing. He just ignores him. He walks in there, but before he can get sat down, you know, President Mike, calls Deku down there to him and tells him to step out in the hallway real quick. And Deku's just like, jeez. And President Mike's telling him, look, there is to be no fighting, don't go causing a scene or anything like that. Basically just lecturing him, telling him not to do anything. And Deku just takes it. He knows that Wolverine is, working with UA, and he'd rather not cause a scene or any trouble for his uncle. So he's just keeping his mouth shut for right now. But he is having to bite his tongue, literally and figuratively, to keep him from saying anything. And, after President Mike, lectures him for about 20 minutes, Deku goes back in there, and the only seat available is all the way at the top, all the way to the left. So he sits down, they hand him his test, and everyone else has already began, and Deku has to finish the same time as everybody else. So he's just like, great. I get lectured for 20 minutes straight, and I'm not even given an extended time. It's like they don't want me to pass. So he fills out his test. He passed, perfect score, to everyone's dismay. AKA, even Nezu wants Deku to fail. Like, they're stacking everything against him. Keep in mind, All Might's not here yet. So All Might, he's not a part of this. And Aizawa, he's actually making a comment like, hey, isn't this supposed to be a fair shake for everyone? Why are you just, singling that kid out? We know who his parent is, sure. But Wolverine's raising him, right? And, Nezu's just like, so, what do I care? He's a foreigner after all. And Aizawa tells him, well, look, he's teaching Class 1A. He's taught them for years. And he's done a great job. And he says, yes, that is true. However, this is not the case with him. And as I was like, look, you're just judging the kid before you even get to see what he's made of. Or to, get to know him. You're not even giving him a fair shake. You have Mike interrogate him and lecture him for 20 minutes, and then won't even give him the proper time that was actually his to take the test, and he still passed. The kid should be automatically accepted just because of that. We already know he's got great combat capabilities. Hell, he's able to go toe-to-toe with Wolverine, Give the kid a break, Like, damn. And Nezu tells him, I will not. And so they're actually getting ready to open up the gate. Deku's down there. He's in the front of the gate. Nobody's really around him. And he's just like, well, better get used to it. After all, this is going to be the rest of my life. A very long life. How lovely. And the gates open, and Deku's like, well, at least I get to take out my aggression on these robots. So he pops his nails, and, he charges straight at him, being as animalistic as possible. because that's his fighting style. It's more animalistic than even Wolverine. Like Deku's running with, you know, his arms and legs down kind of like how Beast does, but Deku style. And he pounces on the robots. He tears into them with his nails, and he's just tearing them apart. Like everyone sees that and they're just like, Jesus. And so he's pretty much destroyed, oh, I don't know, about 200 of them. And he's just looking around for more. Since they're machines, they all kind of smell alike. And there's so many different scents that it's really just bothering him. And, he feels the ground rumble and he looks back and he sees this giant freaking robot just marching at him. And he's just like, oh, this is so not fair. So he's about ready to take off, but he notices Uraraka. She's trapped underneath of the rubble. And he's like, that's that girl from before. And he notices that thing's about to crush her. So he runs over there, he picks up the rubble, throws it off of her, and the zero pointer is actually moving a lot faster than in canon, because Nezu's making it go faster. And Aizawa says, what on earth are you doing? There's another student down there. And Nezu's just like, oh well, we're testing him. And Aizawa says this has gone on far enough. And the zero pointer is about to step on Deku and Uraraka. So Deku just throws her. And the zero pointer, it steps on Deku. And everyone sees that Deku just saved that girl's life. And got just crushed by the zero pointer. However, what they don't know is Deku cut his way inside of its leg. And he's, just crawling his way up there. And, Nezu's just like, oh. And Aizawa's just like, there is no way you're going to be staying the principal. And he's like, he's a supervillain's son. He wasn't going to amount to anything. And Aizawa says, you planned this, didn't you? Nezu says, of course I did. And Aizawa just smirks as he looks out the window. And Nezu's like, what are you smiling about? He points. And he sees Deku rip through the head of the zero pointer. Yeah, he literally crawled his way through the leg all the way up through its head. And is literally just standing on there. And his shirt's been ripped off. Like, he's just bare-chested out there. His pants are nearly, torn off. He doesn't have shoes anymore. And he's just angry. He's just like, this should not have been used for a simple test. And Nezu's jaw literally just drops as he's just like, how? And, Deku's like, oh, I am so telling Logan about this. As, he jumps off of there, he hits the ground, he just walks right out, past everybody, and they're just giving him space. Uraraka, tries to talk to him, and, Deku, he lets her talk, and she just says, thank you, and Deku just grunts and walks off. He's had a pretty bad day. And he gets home. Logan sees him walk through the door, clothes all torn up, missing his shoes, his shirt, hell, even his socks have holes torn in them. And he's like, the hell happened to you? And Deku tells him everything that happened. And Logan's pissed. He's just like, that little furry bastard. And Deku's like, what? He's like, the principal. Ever since he's heard about you, he's wanted me to cancel my recommendation for you. He's the one that's actually responsible for you having to go through the entrance exam. And Deku says, well, I did the best there. Like, there were multiple people there to watch. There's no doubt I should be getting in. And Wolverine says, oh, you're going to get in, even if I have to tear that little furry fuck apart. And, Deku says, I'm going to go take a shower and then hit the bed. And Logan tells him, heads up. As Deku catches it, and he says, a beer? Really? And Logan says, trust me, your healing factor won't let you get drunk. You might as well enjoy it, though. So Deku's just like, thanks. So he pops the top off, and he just drinks his beer all the way to the shower. And, he takes his shower, and he's just thinking, like, as the water's hitting him, he's thinking back to the first night that he saw his father, where he saw Victor, and it was raining. Because I didn't tell you guys what the weather was, so yes, it was raining. And, the fight that happened that day, how Victor tore him apart, and now how he tore that Zero-Pointer apart, it was just like his father. His movements, it's just like they're ingrained inside of Deku. And he just slams his fist as hard as he can against the shower wall. And, he kind of punches through the wall. But, it's a house, not an apartment, so there was nobody on the other side. Because Wolverine, he's pretty stacked. Having a teacher job, like, yeah, he's got that money. So, Deku, he's pretty much just getting out of the shower. He heads off to bed. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. And, next day he hears, Wolverine yelling. And he's just like, Logan, can you keep it down? And, Logan just keeps yelling. Deku's just like, oh, forget this. He gets up, he puts on his clothes, puts on some sweatpants and a t-shirt, throws on his, sneakers, and he goes out. Like, he just decides to go for a run. So he's going for a run, and, he ends up running into somebody along the way. He ends up, seeing this girl, and, it looks like she's kind of nervous or something. And Deku, he walks up to her and he's like, hey, what are you so nervous about? She's like, oh, you can tell? And Deku's like, yeah, I can tell. I can smell the fear. And she's just like, you can smell it? Do I really smell that bad? Deku's like, just relax. Nobody else could smell it but me. And she's like, oh, is that your quirk? You can smell emotions? And Deku says, I don't have a quirk. I'm just a mutant. And she's like, oh, mutants? That's cool. And Deku's like, so, what are you so nervous about? She's like, oh, I have entrance exams today. And Deku's like, oh, where to? She says, UA. Deku says, oh, I thought the entrance exams were only yesterday. She's like, oh, I'm in the recommendation course. They're a day after the, normal ones. And Deku's like, oh, okay. Well, don't worry about it. If the recommendations are a lot easier than the, normal ones, then you should do fine. And she's like, what was the normal exam like? He says, well, for me, not so good. Everybody else, they could probably see it as normal. She's like, what do you mean? Just your experience was different from everyone's? Deku says, that's putting it mildly. And She's like, well, tell me about it. I don't have to be there for another hour. And it is just like right down the road. So Deku says, all right, fine, I'll tell you. Basically, when I get there, everyone's just staring at me, you know, thinking I'm going to do something bad. Try to help a girl up, she yells, and everybody's, threatening me all of a sudden. I go to take a seat to wait for the exam to start. The examine proctor just calls me down and lectures me in the hallway for 20 minutes. The exam's already started. I got 10 minutes to finish before time's up and I have to pass. And they didn't give me the 20 minutes that the proctor wasted. So, yeah. Then when we get to the actual fighting portion, we were fighting robots. I was doing pretty good. I destroyed 200 of them. And once, we get there, this giant robot starts charging at me. I'm about to hightail it out of there. And this girl's right in its path, trapped in some rubble. So, get her out. The robot's right over top of us. Throw her out of the way, and I get stepped on by our robot. I crawl my way through its leg, through its body, and out its head. Jump down, shirt's gone, shoes are destroyed, socks have holes in them, pants torn all the way around apart. Just a bad day overall. Get home, take a shower, go to bed. That was pretty much my day yesterday. And she's hearing that. She's like, that's terrible. That's not how anything should be. And he's like, yeah, and on top of that, they might just refuse to accept me overall. And she's like, why? And Deku says, you don't know who I am, do you? She's like, no, should I? And Deku's like, well, everybody else our age knows. And she's like, sorry, I don't get on the internet that much. And she says, are you famous? Deku says, try infamous. She said, what did you do? And he says, it's nothing on my part, actually, if you can believe it. And she's kind of skeptical. She's like, I'm not quite sure I'd believe you. If you're infamous, that means you had to have done something. Either that or your parent's a criminal or something. And Deku says, try all the above with the parent part. And she's just like, okay, so who is your dad? And Deku says, Sabertooth, Victor Creed was my father. And she's like, oh. And Deku's like, yeah, I guess you want me to quit talking now, huh? She's like, no, I don't care. You're you, not your father's. I don't see why they're holding that against you. And Deku's like, wait, you're really okay with me? And she's like, yeah, 100%. And Deku's like, oh, thank God. You're the second person in the world, pretty much, that's my own age, that doesn't care about who my dad is. And she's like, oh, so you have a friend? And Deku's like, yeah, one friend. She was wanting to go to UA. I'm pretty sure she took her exams elsewhere, though. So, I'm pretty sure she didn't have to deal with what I did. And she's like, oh. And she's like, so is she your girlfriend? And Deku's like, no, she's like a sister to me. And she's like, oh, okay. And Deku's like, oh, by the way, sorry for waiting so long, but what's your name? And she says, oh, my name is Momo Yaoyorozu. Nice to meet you. And may I ask yours? Deku tells her, Izuku Creed. Pleasure to meet you. She's like, Creed. And Deku's like, something wrong? She's like, no, that name fits you. And, she walks off saying that she has to go. It's about 20 minutes till time to be there, and she doesn't want to be late. Deku says, alright, well, good luck. And she says, you too. Deku's like, what do you mean? She's like, just because I'm accepting you doesn't mean everybody else will. And he's like, that's so true. So he continues on his run, and by the time he gets back home, Logan's calmed down, and, Deku walks in, he's like, hey, Uncle Logan. And Logan's like, where'd you go, kid? And he's like, oh, I just went for a run. And he's like, oh, blowing off some steam early? Deku says, yeah, pretty much. He's like, alright, well, I got some good news for you. And, Deku's like, oh, what's the good news? Good news is, you're accepted into UA. And he's like, but I also got some bad news. And he's like, okay, what's the bad news? And Logan says, I can't be your teacher. And Deku's like, wait, what do you mean you can't be my teacher? And Logan tells him, well, the committee threw a big fit about you being enrolled, and with me being your teacher. And on top of that, the Hero Agency isn't too fond of Nezu breaking the rules. So to appease everybody, they fired Nezu, appointed me as the new principal, if you can believe it, and they assigned you a new teacher. And I approved you being, accepted into UA. And there was a teacher who was very adamant about you being able to be in. And so I assigned him as your homeroom teacher and your hero course teacher. And he's like, oh, and who's that? He says, his name's Aizawa. They call him Eraserhead. He'll be your homeroom teacher when you start in a few weeks. So rest up until then. But don't get too lazy. Deku says, wouldn't dream of it, Dad. And Logan says, Dad? And, Deku's like, oh, sorry. Kind of have it, since you're more like a father to me now than I've ever had in my life. It's kind of weird calling you uncle all the time. And, Deku, he's actually, kind of visualizing Logan as his father anyway. And, Logan gets down on his knee and he tells him, look, kid, I'm not the best type of person to be a father. Trust me, I've tried it so many different times. There's only one chance that I ever got it right. And more often than not, I've ended up killing my own kids. I didn't have a choice in the matter. And I had a son. He was a lot like Sabertooth. Which, ironic, Creed has a kid now and you're nothing like him. And Deku's like, what are you talking about? Apparently everyone's concerned that I am exactly like my dad. The way they treat me, they fear me. They just immediately labeled me. And Logan tells him they're going to do that not because you're Sabertooth's son, but because you're a mutant. You being his son is just the excuse they need so it doesn't seem like they're being ruder than what they actually are. They're trying to, in their minds, justify the hatred they feel towards you, the fear you inspire in them. And it's nothing you actually did. It's just some of the old ways are coming back up again. And Deku's like, what do you mean, old ways? And Logan takes a deep breath. And he tells him, back in the day, before all these quirks started popping up, mutants were the only real metahumans. And Deku's like, what's a metahuman? He's like, you wouldn't know it now, but back then, that was the terminology used to, you know, describe people born with powers or who gain superpowers later. They were metahumans. But mutants didn't fall under that category. Mutants, since we have an extra gene in us that's from our evolution, we were the earliest humans to ever have powers. And because of that, people hated us and they feared us and they tried to have us killed, our rights stripped away. It was terrible. They even created sentinels, robotic killing machines to come after us and kill us, to adapt to our powers and use them against us. And Deku, he can tell Wolverine's reliving all these memories while he's talking about it. He says, we formed our own island. It was called Krakoa. We were good till they sent an army of super sentinels after us. They killed almost every single mutant. The only two that survived were me and your dad. And we had a falling out after that. You see, because of our healing factors, we were able to survive longer. The adamantium in our body made us stronger. But a lot of the heavy hitters, people who were stronger than even us, they died protecting us, trying to protect the weaker ones. And, well, me and Sabertooth went berserk. It was all we could do. The Sentinels, they triggered our animalistic instincts. We went full on berserk, couldn't recognize friend or foe. By the time everything quit moving, we calmed down. We realized we slaughtered Sentinels and friends alike, and that they wouldn't fight back against their own kind. And after that, I swore to never be a hero again. So I laid low. I took odd jobs here and there, traveled around. Managed to make my way back to Japan. Everything had been so different, but I lived in the woods here for a while. Hell, I even went up to Mount Fuji for a while. Creed, he did the same. Mount Fuji was mainly his old stomping ground. Until he ran into the Hand, and they offered him the position to lead it. He tried to rope me in with him. I told him no. I told him I was done. That was never going to be the case for me ever again. Well, look how well that turned out. I ended up popping my claws anyway. And so I took up a teaching job at UA whenever it founded. I mean, someone who's had centuries of experience, they would be crazy to turn me away. So I was teaching there all the way up till today. Now I'm its principal. And I popped my claws. And I wasn't even able to stop you from killing your old man. So, some father figure I am, right? And Deku, hearing that, he's just infuriated. He's like, they tried to kill us. All of us. All of you guys. And, Wolverine tells him, maybe I'll take you back there someday. You can see the aftermath. And Deku says, yeah, someday for sure. So, Deku, him and Wolverine, they just spend time with each other till school starts. And, it's the first day of school. Deku's walking in there, and of course, everyone's keeping their distance. And he notices, like, two people run up behind him. It's Asui and Momo. You know, they were kind of surprised to see Deku here, like, so early. But they're glad they ran into him. And so, Deku, he's walking in there with them. And, they're actually talking to him. He opens up the door, and, after Asui and Momo walk through, it's just glares of hatred at him from everyone. Nobody wants to talk to him, and Deku's just like, figures. So, what does he do? He goes all the way to the back, takes a desk, and drags it all the way into the far corner. Sits down there, kicks his feet up on it, and he's just like, oh well. He can already smell Aizawa sleeping over there, so he's not about to wake him up. But everybody else just talking amongst themselves, and, Momo and Asui realize just how isolated Deku actually is, and how fake all these other kids are. And, even Uraraka, someone who was saved by Deku, which is common knowledge right now, because Deku already, pointed her out to them, because, they're just looking at her, just like, really? He saved your life, and you're not even going to change your thought pattern about him? And they're just like, this is nuts. Deku, he's just staring out the window. He doesn't really care. His feet are propped up. He's comfortable. He doesn't really care right now. He's still trying to, come to terms with the fact that he killed his own dad. But Aizawa, he wakes up because of the noise. He slams his fist on the table. He says, quiet. And everyone's just like, oh, crap. He says, alright. I hope you guys are ready. Quirk evaluation time. And, they're like, what? What about orientation? And Aizawa says, fine. I'm Aizawa. I'm your homeroom teacher. Blah, blah, blah. There, orientation over. Get up, go down, get changed to your gym clothes, and meet out on the practice field. And, they're just like, what? Deku gets up and he just starts walking. He exits out the class. He starts walking down there. And Aizawa just pops off. Why can't you guys be more like him? And everyone's just hearing that, and they're like, what, you want us to be more like that mutant freak? And Bako pops off like, you really want me to be like someone like him? Really? That animalistic murderer? And I was always just like, what are you talking about? He's not a murderer. And Bako says, yeah, not yet. He will be. And everyone's just like, he's a mutant freak. Momo has, pretty much just had enough. Asui too. And they start yelling at everybody like, what in the hell is wrong with you? And, they realize that Wolverine's a mutant and he's their principal. And everyone's like, yeah, but Wolverine's different. And she's like, how? How is he different? He's a mutant just like Izuku is. And you guys are calling him a freak. And, Bako pops off and says, Wolverine's a hero. That guy's the son of a villain. And everyone's like, yeah, he's a super villain's son. He's probably just here to try and kill us all eventually. And Aizawa's had enough. He says, everyone's going to shut your mouth. I'm not going to take any more of you guys talking bad about him. You guys don't even know him. Next person who just pops off and starts calling him a mutant freak, you're expelled. No ifs or buts about it. Got it? Now get up, go down there, get changed, and meet me on the practice field, or I will expel this entire classroom. And everyone just realizes Aizawa's not messing around. So they get up and they start, going down there to the gym. They get changed. Deku's already on the practice field waiting. He's just laying down, looking up at the sky. Wolverine comes by and he's like, what's going on? And he tells him, well, I was supposed to be down here to do quirk assessments. And, well, I've been waiting for about 10, 15 minutes. No one else has showed up. And, Wolverine, he sits down by his nephew and he looks him in the eyes and he tells him, anybody, trying to say hi? And Deku says, what do you think? And Wolverine says, look, I know it's not easy. God, I know it's not easy. They'll come around eventually. And Deku says, yeah, almost getting killed by a giant robot saving someone didn't change their minds. I think for anyone to actually acknowledge me, I'd actually have to die. And he says, well, that's near impossible. Wolverine tells him, I'm sorry, but there's no easy way about it. Just keep doing the right thing, and they'll eventually come around. And, Aizawa, he's walking out there, and he sees Logan and Deku, and he's just like, oh, hey, Principal. And Logan's like, hey, how do the kids react to him? And Deku, he's like, I'm just a him, huh? Alright, whatever. And, Aizawa says, to be frank, most of the students hate him. And, Logan just chuckles and says, yeah, that's going to be the case. And so he says, wait, you said most, not all. He says, there's two girls that, stood up for him. And Deku's like, Momo and Asui, right? He's like, how'd you know? And Deku's just like, cause they're the only people that actually walked with me to class. And, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that. And, Wolverine says, just give the kids time. They'll come around eventually. So he leaves before everybody else gets out there. And, Aizawa sees this as a time for him to get to know Izuku on a personal level. And so he tries to get Deku to open up. And Deku, he does, just so he can, try to not seem like a bad guy. And so Aizawa's just like, so, Sabertooth's son, huh? And Deku's like, yeah, sorry if it's causing you trouble. And Aizawa says, I couldn't give a fuck about who your dad is, kid. Literally, I couldn't. Your dad could have been Hitler himself and I still wouldn't have cared. It's all about what you do. And so far, you've shown respect for your teacher, respect for your uncle, and the rules. And Deku's like, yeah, however, I don't think I'm going to get very, gracious receptions from everyone. And, being the son of a supervillain, even if you don't care about it, they do, apparently. I just think it's a reason for them to justify it to themselves to hate me. And Aizawa, he feels that, chord hitting Deku right there in his feelings, because Deku, he's still, it hurts for everyone to hate him. He's not wanting to be hated, In fact, he's trying to just have people be neutral towards him. Like, if they were just neutral towards him, he'd be happy. He's not wanting to be their friends, but he's not wanting to be their enemy either. Especially since he's trying to, turn the name of Sabertooth into something good. And Aizawa tells him, later on in the year, we're going to have you pick hero names. Deku says, I already know mine. And Aizawa says, oh, what's it going to be? Deku tells him, Sabertooth. Aizawa looks him in the eyes and he's like, why Sabertooth? Deku tells him to make that old man roll in his grave, knowing his own son ended up taking his mantle up, but twisting it around and using it for something of good, not evil. And Aizawa, he's like, well, I'm glad you're having that thought. And everybody else starts coming out there, but they're still staying away from Deku. The only two people beside him are Asui and Momo. And, Uraraka is actually kind of, tearing up a little bit because of what was said in the locker room to her. And, Deku notices that and he asks them, what did they say? They said that they'll tell him later. So, Aizawa, he points out Bakugo. And he says, you, throw this ball as hard as you can using your quirk. And Bakugo does it. He gets, 500 meters. And, he says, alright, that's pretty good. Then he calls up Deku. And Deku's just like, oh, great. So he gets up there and, he says, same thing. So Deku, takes the ball back. He throws it as hard as he can. 450 meters. Everyone's like, what? And Bakugo's like, ha, threw it further than you did. And he's about to say it. Aizawa looks at him and Bakugo just stops right there. And, Deku, he just stands his ground and he says, alright, look, I don't care what you call me. You can call me a mutant freak all you want. But that's really the only issue you guys have with me. Is that I'm a mutant. It's not that Sabertooth was my dad or anything. To be frank, you guys are just using that to justify your hatred for me. Because deep down, you can't stand that I'm a mutant. You can't stand that I have more potential than you guys. Or that I'm different. That you guys can't turn off my power. And he's like, I'm not here to be your enemy. And I'm not here to be your friend. But, being hated for no reason? Really? And he points to Uraraka and he says, and you, I saved your life. And yet you still treat me like I'm a villain. Like I'm someone that needs to be feared or something like that. And, everyone is kind of, starting to see the picture here. And Uraraka, she just breaks down crying and just says, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. And, Aizawa just tells Deku, head back to the classroom. He's just going to pass him through this. Because he already knows that, he's strong. He's got what it takes to be a hero. And so Deku goes back to the room. And everybody else, they do their quirk assessments. Pretty much just like canon. And so Deku, he's just sitting in the classroom. And he's just like, great. Hated, feared, everything. And, All Might actually comes in the room and he's like, oh, what are you doing here? And Deku's like, I was told to come back. Apparently I'm disrupting the class. And All Might immediately knows who Deku is because of what he said by disrupting the class. And they're just like, alright, you must be Izuku Creed, right? And, he's like, yeah, that's me. Who are you? And, he just tells them, oh, I'm just a teacher here. And Deku's just like, yeah, okay. And so he tells him, look, I'm not going to judge you. Honestly, I respect what you're doing. It takes a lot of heart, and not a lot of people can do it. Just don't get discouraged, alright? And Deku's like, yeah, sure. Easy for all you guys to say. And Deku, he just picks up his bag and says, I'm going home. And, All Might, he tries to stop him, and Deku just tells him, just leave me alone. He walks right out the school and goes straight home. And All Might goes into Wolverine's office, because Wolverine knows about All Might's condition. And, he just tells him that his nephew went home by his own choice. And Logan says, yeah, I kind of figured that was going to happen. These students, they hate him. And All Might just says, then why don't you punish them for it? And, Wolverine says, trust me, there's nothing more than I'd want to do than that. But a mutant punishing quirked students for, hating against another mutant, it just seemed like I'm doing acts of favoritism. It wouldn't change nothing. If anything, they'd hate him more. And that's when All Might gets an idea. He's like, fine then. I'll punish them. And, Wolverine, he's like, oh, how you gonna do that? And, All Might tells him, well, my, class is coming up tomorrow. Have your son attend, nephew. I keep thinking he's your son for some reason. And Logan tells him, yeah, kids called me his dad too. But, All Might says, have your nephew attend, and I'm going to really set something in motion to where they're going to have to put their trust in him. And he's like, do what you want. And All Might says, thank you very much. And that's where I'm going to leave it off for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did, I would appreciate it if you guys left a like, comment, subscribe if you're new. Push that little notification bell so you never miss an upload. And, I will see you guys tomorrow. And, just so you know, schedule going forward is, tomorrow will be only Cobra. And then the next day will be another Sabertooth. So today is the last day you're getting like 2 episodes a day back to back because it just takes a lot out of me. So going back to 1 video a day. But anyway, thank you guys so much. I'll catch you guys later.